Hello and welcome everyone to this live stream. Today we want to answer some of your questions. So we got like many questions in our WhatsApp community group that we have about Flutter that we want to answer. And for this we have like cover this time different topics. So we will talk about keys in Flutter, how to use different keys like global keys, local keys, object keys, and so on. Then we will talk about different AI code completion tools, how to use them, what are the differences, and yeah, we will talk about some common errors that you might have as Flutter developer that you face during development. We will talk about choosing the right video player for your Flutter project, about backends, how to use a server application, and many, many more things. So that's what we will cover. And these are basically all questions from the Flutter community. And we will right now talk about them. And yeah, for this, we will be here together. And we have here also Harris and Kamlish. And now we want to start with the very first question. So
Okay, so the first question we have is which is the best code completion tool? So we have multiple code completion tools available in the market, but we are going to talk about the most popular tools that are GitHub Copilot and Tab 9. So allow me to share my screen, and here you can see we have the GitHub Copilot and Tab 9, which talking about GitHub Copilot, your AI peer programmer. You can see how GitHub Copilot works. We just give the prompt in the comment format and it will generate the code for you. Talking about Tab 9, AI assistant that speeds up delivery and keeps your code safe. It also works in the same format, like we just give some kind of comments, or we just type the name of the function and it will generate the code for you. Let's see these tools in actions. So here I have to create the class of users, which for by using the GitHub Copilot. So what I did, I just wrote the simple comment which says create a class named user with properties name, email, number, address, and ID. So if I press enter, you can see we will have suggestions. So here you can see we will have suggestion, and if I go with that suggestion, here you can see our user class is generated successfully with the properties name, email, number, address, ID. So now let's move to the main.dart. Now we have to create the list of users. So for that, what I do is I simply write the comment which says create a list of users named random users and add some users to it. So what it will do, it will provide some suggestion, and here you can see it is providing some suggestion. We can accept or reject that. So it will now generate the list of users named random users. So now here you can see we have the list of users available. Again, in the scaffold body, I have already completed the development using the GitHub Copilot. I wrote the comment display a list of random users, and it just developed the widget for me of list view builder. And now when I restart the app, here you can see we have already rendered the users successfully. So this is how GitHub Copilot works. Now let's talk about how this tab 9 works. So basically, for tab 9, I just use this syntax, this double colon syntax, and if I remove this comment from here, now if I press enter, you can see here I am getting the suggestion to get the second user address, and if I press tab, it's just generated the code for me, and here you can see it is generated by the tab 9 pro. So this is how tab 9 works. Now let's move to the next slide. What basically these are the we can find some differences, and here are the differences basically. So GitHub Copilot is better at generating entire functions and classes, better at understanding the context of your code, and better at suggesting relevant completions. Meanwhile, tab 9 is better at suggesting code completions for individual lines of code. Like we just created a simple function with tab 9, and feature to train own models for cloud or offline mode. So this, I hope this answers the question. So we can move.
Hello everyone. So this question we have received from our community, like how should I go about listening to my app resume state from the background? So let me tell you first of all what this question means. Let's suppose you want to create some kind of chat application where you want to show the online and the offline status. For example, here we have this chat application. You can see this user John Doe is online. You can see this by looking at this green dot. And this person Yusuf is offline, and you can see this by looking at this gray dot. So we also want to implement this kind of functionality in our app. So for this kind of functionality in Flutter, we have this did change app lifecycle state method, and we will utilize this method to change the state and to listen for the state of our app. So let's go to this screen. Just give me a moment. So here, if you see, we have this code already in our YouTube video, and let's just go a little back. And here, if you see, we have implemented this did change app lifecycle state, and it has this app lifecycle state which has like four different states. For example, the resume state, the inactive state, pause state, and the detached state. So first of all, let's talk about the resume state. So this resume state gets called when the user reopens the app. So if you see here, the user is reopening his app, and then this resume state will be called. And now we have the inactive state. This inactive state gets called when the user is getting a call or maybe getting a notification. So usually it is called when the user's app runs in the background. The third one we have is the pause state. So here, for example, the user is getting the notification or the call. This pause state is called when the user app is not running in the foreground. Maybe he is switching to the different app, and then this pause state will be called. And the last one we have is the detached state, where the user terminates the app completely. So we will utilize all these four states to achieve this functionality. So we are using the switch case statement here, and inside this we are passing this state thing. And now let's see like how we are going to use it. First of all, we have this resume state, and you when this resume state will be called, we are changing some user data inside Firestore database. For example, this last active or the online status. And then inside the update user data, first of all, we are updating the last active as the current time. And the second thing we are doing is we are changing the is online to true, because user is resumed, he reopened the app, and that's where we want to show this green button. And for the next three states, for the inactive, paused, and detached state, we only want to make it offline. So for that, but first of all, we also make sure to break it, otherwise it will not work. And when you break it, after that you can use these three different cases, and for all these three different cases we want to make the user offline. So we are using this is online parameter here and changing it to false. And that's how you can make your apps like this. You can add this functionality of online and offline inside your apps. But here you need to make sure one thing: you need to call this did change app lifecycle state inside the root of your application, because you want to directly change your app state from the root of the application, because that's the widget which will be called every time. So this is about this question where you want to implement some online and offline kind of thing in your chats, and this is how it can be achieved. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay, so we can move to the next question, which says Flutter message set state or mark needs build called during the build. So let's reproduce this error and let's try to solve this. So how this error occurs? So whenever we call a show dialog or anything like that, any function like that in our build function, this error happens. Here you can see the set state or mark needs build error is happening in my application right now. So how we can solve it? We can just simply wrap this show dialog box in our widget dot instance dot add post frame callback. And now if I restart the application, you will see my error will be resolved. So now here you can see my error is resolved, and also I am able to see the alert dialog with the cancel button and the approve button. So this is how we can solve this issue. This issue basically happens when the set state or a method like that is called in the build function, or while your widget tree is building. So I hope this answers the question. We can move to the next question.
Yeah, the next question we have from Ayush. He is asking like which Dart backend is the best. So let's talk about this, like which is the best Dart backend. So you might have seen like we have multiple Dart backends, for example, Shelf, Dart Frog, and also we have this server pod. So let's talk about the Shelf package first. So if you see, this Shelf package is maintained by the Dart team. So the main advantage of using this Shelf package is it is maintained by Dart team, and also it is really flexible to use. You can use in your applications if you want to have some functionalities about the backend. But the main thing about this package is it is maintained by the Dart team, and also this is really very customizable, where you can add different shelf libraries. For example, the shelf router and the shelf static. These are the libraries that you can also integrate with this package to achieve more advanced functionality. So you will ask like what are the disadvantages of this shelf package. So shelf is actually not a full server framework. It is a kind of lightweight, but it also has some customizability, as I have mentioned earlier. And the second disadvantage of this package is uh, it can also be cumbersome while implementing the different libraries. For example, shelf router and the shelf static. These things can take a lot of time if you want to integrate them along with the shelf package. So the next package that we have is the Dart Frog. And if you can see here, this is the Dart Frog. It is really built for speed. So you can see it is built for speed. So it means it is a kind of lightweight, and it is also powered by Dart, which means that it is also built on the top of Shelf package. So its like advantages are it is a really lightweight and built on the top of Shelf. It aims to simplify all the concepts of Shelf. So for example, in the Shelf you have some complex functionalities about the routing, about any other about other functionalities. For example, the Shelf static. But inside Dart Frog there is some kind of abstraction which will simplify your code. You do not have to write a lot of code. And this is basically the main advantage of using this package. And as it also like relies on the Shelf, which is maintained by the Dart team, so it also ensures stability and reliability. So you will ask like what are the disadvantages. So mainly the disadvantage of using this package is it is also not a full server framework. It is already built on the top of Shelf, and it is also not a full server framework. And sometimes the abstraction for the routing might also not be good, because if you want to have some customization for routing maybe, then I will definitely not recommend you to use the Dart Frog. You can directly use the Shelf, because it has this Shelf router package. You can integrate it with this package and make some customization. So the last one in the row we have is this server pod. This is a kind of most advanced framework available right now. It has a lot of features. If you go down here, it has world-class logging, it has this built-in caching, and also it has this revolutionary ORM. It also has file uploads, authentication, data streaming, task scheduling, and many more. So basically it is a most advanced framework. That's why I have said that. And the disadvantages of this package is As I said, it is really most advanced, so it can be complex to get started with. And also it has some prerequisites, like you need to integrate the Docker, you need to integrate Postgres, you need to integrate Redis. So you need to learn all these things beforehand if you want to utilize this completely. Otherwise, you can go for Dart Frog or the Shelf. So mainly you will ask like who is the winner here, like which is the best one, because this person has asked like which is the best framework. So basically it all depends on your um, uh, whatever you want to accomplish. If you want to have a really lightweight without customizing a lot of things, you can go with the Dart Frog. And if you want to have a little bit customization, then you can go with the Dart Frog, you can go with the Shelf package. And if you want to really implement a full backend, then you can definitely go with the server pod. So yeah, this is about this question. Now we can move on to the next.
That was a great explanation, Kamlesh. So, moving to the next question, is there any working video player for Flutter? Yeah, obviously, there are many working video players available on pub.dev, but let's just talk about the most popular video players for Flutter, uh, which includes video player. Here you can see the video player on pub.dev. Also, we have Chewy, and also we have Better Player. So, let's discuss one by one. Video player is basically maintained and supported by the official team of Flutter. Meanwhile, Chewy and Better Player is not supported by the official team of Flutter, but it is supported by the community, which is also good. And talking about Better Player, it supports the platform like Android and iOS. Meanwhile, Chewy also supports web, Linux, Mac OS, and platforms like that. And meanwhile, Video Player also supports the platforms like that. So we have created a chart for the better comparison and clear understanding between these three packages. Can we have that on screen? Yeah. So we have multiple points, like we have multiple criteria for selecting a package. So talking about the feature of video player, as I already told you, the supported platforms are Android, iOS, web, Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and same for the Chewy. But better player only supports Android and iOS right now, and all of them support the common video formats like MP4, AVI, MOV, and MKV. But what Better Player has extra in it, it encrypts your videos. So any application like that in which needs encryption of video and things like that, you can go with the Better Player. Talking about the full screen mode, yeah, they all support full screen mode. Talking about custom controls, again, video player has some limited custom controls, but if you can do it by writing some custom code. But when you are using Chewy or Better Player, you have a lot of customization available. Talking about autoplay, again, video player does not support autoplay. Meanwhile, Chewy and Better Player supports the autoplay. So basically, make it clear, better player is based on Chewy. So when the better player is created, it is based on Chewy. So that's why better player is more, we can say more better than the Chewy. So talking about thumbnail generation, no, they all don't provide thumbnail generation. And again, I already told you the video player is officially maintained by Flutter official team. Meanwhile, Chewy and Better Player is not supported by the Flutter official, but it is supported by the community. So again, it depends upon your usage. It depends upon your criteria, what you want to achieve, and you can choose any package you want. So I hope that answers the question. We can move to the next question.
Yeah, so the next question from the community we have is how to catch API exceptions in a good way. So this is really a good question because a lot of people wants to know what is the best way to catch the exceptions in our Flutter application. So if you can see my screen here, we have this API created already where we are calling this JSON placeholder API to fetch the post. So let's make it correct first of all. So how we can implement these exceptions handling in our app. So for that, first of all, we need to utilize the sealed classes. You have seen like we have got the sealed classes, abstract classes, final classes with Dart 3.0. So here we can directly utilize this new feature to handle the exceptions. So first of all, we have created here this result sealed class, and it is returning this S type and E type. So you will wonder like what are these different types. So these are like kind of types. First of all, the S represents the success value, and the E represents the exception or a subclass of it. So these are the two things that we need to understand. And the next thing where we need to do is we are creating this success subclass, which is also extending from the result. And inside its constructor we are using this value, and we are storing this value inside this value variable. So the same thing we are doing for the failure class. We have also created this failure class. So basically we will utilize this failure class to catch all the failures, all the exceptions. So that's why it is it did here this like we are using the exception, and then we are storing this exception here. Now let's go back to our api.dart file. And here, if you see, we are using the switch case statement. If the response code, if the response status code is 200, we are returning the success with all the data. And if it is failure, we are returning the exception. And also, when we are catching the exception, we are again returning the failure. Now, let's go back to main.dart file. Here inside the init state we have called our fetch current post method, and inside this fetch current post we have called this fetch post. And also again we are using the switch statement here. And when the result is success, so we are printing this title here for our post. And if there is a failure, we are printing like something is wrong with the exception. Now let's run this application and see how it is working. Let's open the debug console and let's restart it. So if you see, we are printing something like this. This is in different language, so you might not understand this. So this is the title for our post. This is the title that we are getting from our user model. And let's make some changes inside our apis. Maybe let's make it different and see if we are getting some kind of exception. So you see it, we already received this exception here, like something went wrong. The exception message is not clear because we have changed the url. But if there is some server issue, maybe with the json placeholder server, then definitely it will print the exact exception here. Maybe there is something wrong with the server, or maybe the server crashes. So these are the things that you can implement in your application if you want to handle the exceptions in a really good way. So yeah, this is about this question. So the next question we have also here is about Flutter keys. Himanshu has asked like, what is Flutter keys and in which situation it is used? This is also a good question. You might have heard of the Flutter keys, but maybe you have not implemented this in your apps. So
Yeah,
let's see what
yeah,
Flutter keys. Uh, so if you see like if you see the definition of keys, first of all, so a key is an identifier for widgets. So what does it mean? So basically keys are a fundamental concepts used to uniquely identify, as it is saying like it is identifier, so it means it is used to uniquely identify and reference widgets in the widget tree. So they are primarily used to maintain the widget state, manage widget reuse, and enable more efficient updates in cases where you are adding, removing, or reordering a collection of widgets of the same time that holds some state. So let's see like how we need to do that. So some of the most commonly used keys in Flutter are global keys. If you see here, we have global keys, local keys, value keys, and we also have the object keys and unique keys. So let's implement the first of all the global keys, like how we can use the global keys in our application. And here you see we have first of all go to the first page because this is the first implementation. And here in this page, what we want to do is we want to implement the global change. We want to change the widget state from its parent widget. For example, we have this counter widget here. We do not want to change this counter value, this value directly from this widget. We want to change this value from the parent widget. So let's go to first page. Here you see we have the floating action button. So whenever user presses this floating action button, we want to change this counter. We want to increment this counter. So how do we do that? So first of all, we need to create this key counter. Here we are using the global key for this key counter. And the second thing we need to do is we need to pass this key inside our counter widget. Uh, but you will ask like how we are able to pass this directly because we have not defined anything our counter widget. But you see this key is already in our default implementation. So sometimes you do not have to pass it automatically; it creates by itself. But if it is not creating by itself, you can also create it by adding this key here. So now the second thing we do is inside our floating action button, we get the current state. We are getting the current state of our current widget state. I mean about this is our current state. We are directly accessing state in this variable, and now we are calling the increment method to increment the state, and lastly we will print our state in our debug console. So now if I run if I save this program and if I open the debug console, what we need to do is we need to press this button. So let's press this, and you see it is printing this 5, and we are changing this state directly from the parent widget. And every time when you will press this, it is incrementing this value by 5. It is adding the 5 value in the existing counter every time. So this is how you can utilize the global key. There is one more feature about the global keys that you can also implement your apps. So for that, I have created this second page. And for this, what we are going to do here is we are going to utilize the global keys to add the validation in this form. We have the name and the email. Now we have not implemented the validation. So if you press submit, it will do nothing. Maybe it will submit your form as the empty form, but we do not want to do that. We want to throw some errors if there is something wrong with our form. So let's go inside our second page. Here, if you see, I have already created our form key, but this time I am utilizing this form state. So you will wonder like, what is this form state? So as we already know, for creating this form, this login form, maybe we are utilizing this form widget. So inside this form widget, if you go directly here, you will see we have this form state. So using this form state, we will access the state's form and maybe we can trigger some actions. So go back to second page, and now we are going to utilize this form key directly inside our form. Let's do this. Here you can see we have added our form key. Next thing, let's go to our submit, this submit method. Here we first of all want to, but before that, here we need to add the validations, because we want to show the validations directly below these text fields. So here I am using the validator, where inside if the value is not null and the value is we are showing the null. Similarly, we are doing the same thing for our email. We are printing enter a valid email if there is something wrong with our email text field. So let's go back to our submit method, and let's access the current state using this form key. The next thing we need to do is we need to check using this validate method that if the form is valid. And if the form is valid, we are going to print the values in our debug console. And if there is something wrong and the form is not valid, we will print form is not valid, and it should also show the errors directly below these text fields. So let's run the app, and first of all try to submit this form empty. And you see it is printing enter a name and enter a valid email because there is nothing inside. Now let's put some some text inside. Maybe let's write test as the name and test@email.com as the email. Now try to submit that. And if you see, there is no errors, and it is also printing this form is valid directly inside the debug console, and it is also printing the name and the email. So this is how you can implement these keys. Another keys that you can implement is value key and this object keys. You can also learn about these directly going to this Flutter documentation. You will learn more about all these keys, about the global key, value key, and object key and unique keys. So this is about the keys in Flutter. So you might have understand like what are the keys, how we can utilize them, and yeah, that's about this question.
All right, so this was already the last question of this live stream today. And yeah, if you also want to answer some questions, you can simply go to our HeyFlutter YouTube channel and you can join our WhatsApp group. So here's like join WhatsApp group. And yeah, you can simply join us and then also ask questions. And maybe next time we will also answer then your Flutter question. And yeah, so that's basically about this live stream. Thank you for attending this live stream and have a really great evening, day, or whatever time you have right now.
All right, thank you guys.